Today we talk about how to avoid bedroom blindness, one of the most challenging things that a lot of people deal with. It's what the Bible says about our sex life. It's a very powerful and helpful series. I hope you've enjoyed it. This is part 4. And this is the how-to part of it. And if you came to church, you say, well, I wouldn't have come if I'd known that. My goodness. But buckle up for a second. Let me show you 4 things that can revolutionize your life. 4 things that can help you in a very practical way in your life have a different result in your life. People can tell you all day what you should and shouldn't do, but if they don't show you how, then it's difficult. What I've chosen today is one guy. There's only one guy in the Bible really who shows us how this way. His name is Joseph. He's the only guy in the Bible where you see the temptation he faced from the time he's faced it until the end when it was resolved. Joseph is a model of the how process. And I really believe it's so important for you in this series to not assume that this is about you being bad or out of control, to just make you a bad person. I don't want you to feel that way. That's not what I'm trying to communicate. I'm not trying to get you to feel as if somehow God's looking at you saying, you dirty person, you got these sexual passions and you're wrong. That's not true. He designed it. There's a whole study we could do on God's intent and purpose. The bottom line was he wanted the world to continue. The reason he created this was because he wanted it to continue, and this is the only way it could. So not going through all the details of that, I don't need to do that, but I think the point you get. The problem is, what's wrong? Was what God designed meant to be this? How did it move from being a private, personal experience between a husband and a wife in the Garden of Eden to something that's now broadcast all over television and all over radio and portrayed in so many different ways? Comedians abuse its value many times, and there are funny dynamics to this whole part of our life. We understand that, but there's something sacred about it. There's something special about it, because in that ability lies the future of the world. Your generations. A friend of mine shared this one time with me, and I was so moved by what he said that in my seed, in a person's seed, there are families there, grandparents, great-grandparents, and God never intended that to be spread all around without any regard. It's not just something that is casual. It's not just a casual part of our life. There's a power in this gift that's often abused and often misunderstood. It's not just something that you put on a television show and you joke about and you laugh about as if it has no meaning, even though I understand the humor in it. I understand that. I understand. See, I get that. I'm not confused by that. I'm not offended that some things aren't funny about it. I'm just simply saying, I wonder, have you become bedroom blinded? That's the term I use. Where you diminish the value of what God's given you. I was 19 years old before I heard one sermon on this topic. All I heard all my life was don't fornicate, don't do this, don't do that, don't commit adultery. No one explained it to me. And in my family, it was not a sit down at the table, let's talk about this part of your life. You're starting to have feelings and you're starting to have desires. Let me explain what this means. And churches is a bad place for it. Churches, we preach at people. We don't talk to people. Jesus sat down with people and let them ask questions. He allowed people to engage. And I think that helps people to develop the right attitude. And so in this series, I'm going to show you a young man who shows us how to balance this area of our life when you're faced with temptation. Look with me, if you would please, in Genesis chapter 39, if you're following in your Bible, but if you're following in your notes, it's Genesis 39. And I want to give you the steps that can help you to avoid being blinded by your sexual passions. And there are 4 steps you need to understand. Repeat the first one with me, please. Say, be privately consistent. Joseph was privately consistent. When you look at this guy's life, he was not consistently committed because he was in the public. His life story gives him an excuse. Because number 1, he was sold into slavery. Chapter 39, verse 1 says, Joseph being taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there. Joseph was sold by his brothers. It's a sad story. at 17 because they were mad with him. Some of you say, well, I'm glad my siblings didn't have the power to do that. But they sold him to the Ishmaelites. The Ishmaelites then sold him to Potiphar. Now, he is in a house, he's in a place where he has a right to be bitter, despite what happened to him to be, number two, a great employee. Listen to what the Bible says about his work habit. The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a successful man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian, and his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand. So Joseph found what? Favor, verse 4 says, in his sight, and served him. Then he made him overseer of his house and all that he had. He put under his authority. So it was from that time that he had made him overseer of his house and all that he had that the Lord blessed the Egyptians' house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in the house and in the field. Thus he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he did not know what he had except for the bread which he ate. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. Notice, this is a guy who has an incredible work ethic. He's a servant. He's committed. He looks for him. I love verse 4. It said he served him. That's what made this guy special. Because he's like this in his private life. In his private life, he's consistent. It's one of the things I tell myself when I finish with you, right? When I take off the suit and I go home, am I consistent? Or am I just up here trying to impress you? It's so easy to do that when you're on the stage. You know, it's just about impressing people. But when I get really close up on you and I see you, you're not what you say you are. You know, everybody has different attitudes. You know, there's your financial attitude, there's your sexual attitude, there's your work attitude, and you can go on through the list, right? Relationship, emotional attitude. When you get to know people, you find out what their real attitude's like. That's why some of you who fall in, quote, in love with people, when you get to know them, you find out their sexual attitude is not what I thought it was. I thought they were faithful to me, but they're not. I thought their financial attitude was one way, and it's not. You think they changed. I say you just became informed. I'll say you took the time to check out the train instead of just watching the train go by you. Here's what I think. If you allow yourself to define your relationship, you say, well, let me see here. Hey there, come on by here tonight. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. Every time you see their name on your phone, you'll think about it. You become blinded, and all you'll have with them is a sexual relationship. You won't have any relationship. And you get so blinded and you become so controlled by that and so dominated by that that the other parts of their personality you won't get to know. And a lot of people don't find out until they get on the train, drive off, train smoking away, and they get halfway down the track and the train runs out of gas. Because they didn't put any gas in the train. Now you're putting all your coal in the train, trying to keep the train going. And you were sure, based on the way he looked, that he would work. You were sure that based on the way she kissed, that she was going to be faithful to you and help you. You were wrong. You jumped on a train without understanding the train. You didn't look at all the different cabins on the train. And you made assumptions. It's really powerful when you step back and you realize, man, I lost my way. I lost my perspective. And I stopped analyzing things and I started assuming things. But Joseph, man, this is a guy who's not like that. In the privacy of his life, he's consistent, he works hard, he's devoted, he's committed. This is a guy who's not going to just jump on any train. He has a private conviction. And it shows up in his workplace. Are you the same? Are you the same when there's train and when there's no train? Are you the same no matter who you meet? This was a guy who was consistent, even when it's not fair. Say that with me, please. Come on. Even when it's not fair. Because some of you got this great thing about, it's not fair. And so you think because it's not fair, you have a right to be crazy. That somehow you have some license because it's not fair. And so you're always declaring what's not fair. It's just not fair for him. But he was so trustworthy. Look at verse 6, that the guy left all that he had in Joseph's hand. He didn't even know what he had. Everything he had. He didn't know the balance sheet, the cash flow, the profit loss. He didn't know anything. Everything was about Joseph. We trust you. So Joseph was the man that was amazingly consistent in private. But there was one challenge he had. He was good looking. Verse 6, B, and B is like the second part of verse 6. Sometimes if you see a verse, 6a is the first part, 6b is the middle, 6c, so you can go on down the road. But in the second part of verse 6, Joseph was handsome and form in appearance, it said. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast longing eyes on Joseph. And so all of a sudden, Joseph now is approached by his master's wife, and she's got no tact. She's ghetto. She's pure ghetto. She says, she looks at him and says, come lie with me. Right out the bat, hey, you, come on, let's go to the bedroom, me and you, right now. This is tacky. This is awful. And he's taken back by it. But I want to show you what's amazing. This is a guy who, number 2, had firm boundaries. Here's how you avoid bedroom blindness. Number 1, you got to be privately consistent. Come on, say, be privately consistent. And be firm about your boundaries. You got to have firm commitment. These are my boundaries. And I want to show you what he did. Joseph refused. He simply said no. He refused to passively say no. He wasn't going to just passively say it. He wasn't writing her a note. He spoke to her directly. And here's what he said. Joseph, the Bible said, he refused and said to his master's wife, nobody around, let me just set you straight, Miss Potiphar. Let me help you. Let me tell you now. Here are my boundaries. Now, I want you to notice the courage in this. He's a slave. But he says, listen, here's my boundaries. My master does not know what is with me in this house. And he has committed all that he has to my hand. There is no one greater in this house than I, nor has he kept back anything from me but you, because you are his wife. Maybe I should remind you of who you are. You belong to him. You don't belong to me. I have no rights to you. I don't have a right to text you, hug you, kiss you, nothing. Can't email you. I have no rights to in any way romantically cross this line. I want you to hear this. What's really amazing to me is people who violate this all the time hate it when someone violates their line. Women who absolutely would be devastated if their man cheated, cheat. And then have the nerve only because he got caught, but he don't know her secret. Oh, I've done this too long to not know what I'm talking about. One of my questions sometimes is if it happens, I say, well, have you ever? Well, yeah, Pastor, I have. I'm not going to ask you how many times or who. I'm not going to ask you that. Because what's interesting is this is a person here who's crossed boundaries. And we're raising up a culture with no boundaries. But this is a guy who says, let me tell you my boundaries. There's no one greater than me in this whole house. He's kept back nothing but you because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness? This is wrong and sin against God. Notice, he refused. He was loyal to his boss, and no one's around. Catch this. No mentor. Nobody's mentoring this guy. These are his private, personal convictions. No self-help books. This is his private, personal conviction. He's refused. He was loyal. He knew his sexual boundaries. I do not cross that. You are his wife. You are not mine. And he viewed it as a wicked thing to do. This is a crime. This is a crime. I am wrong. And it's so easy for a person to not understand that nobody can save you from this unless you're willing to say, this is my boundary, like he did. This is wicked, like he did. And this is a sin against God, like he did. Even though the music feels good and makes you think it's okay because it sounds cute and has some great lyrics to it, that's still, in point of fact, not a good thing to do. And that's what I'm trying to do, I promise. I'm going to tell it. I'm going to tell it. But what's interesting is when you cheat, you're not cheating against just your mate, you're cheating against God. I thought that was a tremendous revelation. And what's really strong about this guy is his firm boundary wasn't just a one-time thing. If you look at number 2 in your notes, he refused repeatedly. She came to him over and over and over and over again. Over and over and over and over again. Some people are good for 1 no, 2 no's, but you're not good for 3. And so notice with me in verse 10, so it was as she spoke to Joseph, how often? day by day that he did not heed her. See, notice the big speech he gave her didn't work. Sometimes you can sit down with your boyfriend, you can sit down with somebody you love, and you can say, look, let me tell you what my new boundaries are. Let me tell you what my thoughts are, my passions for my life. And they hear you and they go, oh, that's wonderful. Oh, okay. But then next day, they forgot everything you said. And so every day he's walking by her, she's going, say, Joseph. I mean, she is on the hunt. What's really important to understand, it's not always women on the hunt. We got to be careful when you read the Bible. You don't think it's always women on the hunt. Men are on the hunt too. There's a point in your life when you have to admit, this temptation is going to be here for a minute, and I have to decide where my boundaries are. He had firm boundaries that he would not relinquish. He said no, and he meant no. So number one, be privately consistent. Number two, be firm about your boundaries. And here's number three. You ready? Number three. I'm sorry, I almost forgot something important. Verse 11. Go back to number 2. Notice that because he wouldn't, she decided one day he's got to pay a price. Look at verse 11. It happened about this time when Joseph went into the house to do his work that none of the men of the house was inside. She decided one day, listen, today's the day, dude. She gave everybody the day off, and she grabbed him. She caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. But he left his garment in his hand, and in her hand, rather, and fled and ran outside. All he could do is run. There are moments when it's so strong, that's all you can do. And this would cost him. He ended up going to prison because of this. His refusal led to imprisonment. Because he wouldn't, all she had to do was let it go. Well, the guy said no, he ran outside, leave him alone. No, she lied. She decided to tell her husband, look, the guy you brought in here to lead our house, the guy you trusted, look, he tried to assault me, here's his coat to prove it. And so he goes to jail for years. Eventually God delivers him. Eventually he becomes the leader of the second man in charge of the nation because he has a dream. See, the whole problem he had in his life was he was dreaming. His brothers didn't like him because he had dreams. But here's a guy now who, after being in prison for wrongly committed, God delivers him. If you read the rest of the story, you see it. And he ends up being second in charge of Egypt. But here's the point I want you to see. I want you to see how this guy had a boundary that he drew, and he would not relinquish it for anybody. He was committed. He said, I'm not doing that. And until you set those boundaries, it's over. I can preach to you forever. I can tell you forever until you go. If you do 1, 2, 3 will happen. Say it, come on. Say, if I do 1, 2. Come on, say, if I do 1 and 2, 3 will happen. You can pray, read the Bible, go to church, speak in tongues, fall out, doesn't matter. Bedroom blindness is all over churches. Church is full of people who are bedroom blind. And they learn how to cover it up with spiritual language and talk, but when you get close up on them and you deal with them intimately and personally, you see it. The ability to be committed, the ability to be devoted to one person is almost gone. Pastors are bedroom blind, band members, choir members, I mean, it's everywhere. And they find each other in the church. All you got to do is, how you doing? I'm bedroom blind. You bedroom blind? Me too. We all bedroom blind, that's right. And they got bedroom blind smiles. Hey, they got smiles. They got looks. I was downtown. I like to go downtown so I can look at people. It's really cool. And I was downtown. Yeah, I do. I go down there all the time. And I was down there. Some of y'all going to see me. Hey, go Pastor Rick. He looking today. Look, he looking. And I was down there, man, and I saw a young girl, bedroom buying clothes. I said, girl, that's tight, baby. Wow, everything's showing. And then you see the guy, he's standing bedroom blind, standing there looking bedroom blind. Listen. He blind, she blind, everybody blind. They all smiling. You ever seen people out there in the cold with them little tight things on and nothing on? That's how you know she's bedroom blind. If she out there and she's half naked when it's cold and she's shaking, she's bedroom blind. That's it. You may never have done anything, you just look like it. You need to pause and ask yourself, what am I saying to people? What am I saying to people? What sense does it make for me to, in 30-degree weather, why am I like this? Somebody help me, I need a coat. It's because you're trying to make some statement, some sexy statement that isn't really that sexy. And here's what I believe, sexy is. Make you uncomfortable in church, I'm sorry. But here's what sexy is. Sexy is not just looking sexy. Because sexy has to do with laundry and clothes and cleaning and life. Really. A woman who's been married for a very long time, let me tell you what excites her. Seeing a guy who takes care of his business. He loves his wife. He handles the business. He's there when the kids are sick. He's there when she's throwing up. You know, that's a sexy guy. Not some stud walking around saying, hey, babe, what you come? You know what I'm saying? And lazy and won't do anything. That's not a sexy guy. That's not a sexy woman. A sexy woman is not a woman whose toes are right. She's got her toes done, got her nails done, she got her hair done, but she is lazy and mean and irresponsible. And come on, are you with me? See, oh, come on. Come on, it changes. You can get away with that sexy definition for now. You can get away with it in college. You can walk around and they fantasize about who you are because you carry books in a nice, sweet way and you walk funny and your hips move. All that's great. But once they live with you for a while, just a few minutes, won't take long. And a lot of guys, you know when this happens? People move in together. They meet, on Friday. They fall in love on Saturday. They move in on Sunday. Monday, they can't stand each other. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, somewhere in that week, it starts going crazy. Because now we have to broaden our definitions to include life. And that's what God meant it to be, life. God meant it to be about living together. You know how messed up we are in our head? And you see Adam and Eve, you first see these naked people, right, walking around the garden. That's because to you, that somehow symbolizes something sexual, and that's not what it symbolized to them. They didn't even know they were naked. They were so in love with each other and so bonded together that nudity had nothing to do with it. So what have we done? We've elevated nudity to this place that doesn't make sense, and women don't get it. They go, what's your problem? What's this? This is the body. What's the problem? Well, see, understand, what's amazing is Adam wasn't going around Googling all day. Hey, Adam, Eve, how you doing? How you doing? He wasn't like that. He saw her as a person. He saw, catch this, beyond the body, and she saw beyond the body. They saw each other. There's something about that, and that's what was lost in the fall. They didn't see each other the same. God asked them when they said, hey, God, we're naked. He said, who told you that? Who told you that? Who gave you that definition? That now you got to cover up. And you've been covering up ever since. Eventually, they would have put clothes on. I get that, because they would have had to. But these were two married people living in their house alone. Nobody there but them. And so God's trying to paint a picture. You want to know what a relationship is? It's when you see beyond that. That's a part of your life, but it's not all of your life. Pornography makes it all of your life. Every day you're in the computer trying to see something. Oh, and there you go, every day. That's you. And that somehow is love. That's not love. That's a confused person who's pretending. And you're drawing in and paying for that, and there's something that's happening in your mind. Every day you're becoming more and more and more defined by that wrong definition and blinded by it. And a lot of women play into this, and I'm telling you, that's why they can't see straight. You're doing all the sleeping with them beforehand, man. They don't even get to know you as a person. He doesn't know you at all. Because of the way his brain, you don't understand how men's mind work. That's all he thinks about. That's what they say in the books. You don't help him by being this way. You're not helping him at all. And you're not helping her. She thinks one thing, you're thinking something else. Everybody's blinded. You know how I know I'm telling the truth? Look at your relationships up close. Just zoom in close and tell me what you got. Tell me how well this has worked out for you. All the love songs, all the music, all the whatever you've done, all the stuff you've done. Tell me how much better your love life is today because of these choices. This whole series is not about making you feel bad. It's about making you say, come on, let's do it the right way. Let's pause for a moment and think about the long-term impact of this, and let's be honest about the limits. And I'm going to get to this next point because it's important. Number 3. Number 1, be privately consistent. Number 2, be firm about your boundaries. Number 3, be honest about your limits. Come on, say it with me, please. Come on. Be honest about your limits. Here's what it says. Can a man take fire in his bosom and not be burned? Proverbs 6:27. I've always loved this verse because it asks a tremendous question. Can I possibly take fire in my bosom and it not burn me? Can I possibly do that? Is it possible for me to be consistently obedient to God and I'm always doing 1, 2, hoping I don't do 3? I'm always going to places where there are hot coals. Can one, verse 28, Proverbs 6, can one walk on hot coals and his feet not be burned or seared? It's amazing. No, you can't. It doesn't work. So is he who goes into his neighbor's wife. Whoever touches her, that's one, you see, shall not be innocent. Amazing. Is your life really out of bounds? Are you honest about your limits? For some of you, you need to say, I can't win you to Christ. I don't need to share the faith with you because I can't help you. I am too attracted to you for the wrong reasons. That takes courage. You may not even know why you're feeling that way, but you know it's wrong. You know it's not good for you. It won't work. It just wouldn't work. I mean, I wish it was that. I wish it was that simple. I wish it was just that simple. I could look at somebody, she's pretty, and go, okay, come here. Me and you're gonna be together forever, and that's it. I wish I could make choices like, but it's not like that. I have to be clear and be honest. Why am I going to burn myself? Why am I going to embarrass me, God, my family, my daughter, my son, you? Why am I going to make you apologize for me and my behavior? Why am I going to take this fire in my bosom and assume nothing's going to happen? There's no limit to what I can do. Yes, there is. Because if I'm really honest, there's a consequence. Here you go. Number one, you want to avoid bedroom blindness? Be privately consistent. Number two, be firm about your boundaries. Number three, be honest about your limits. I can't do that. I can't talk to you. I can't call you. I can't come over there. Because if I come, that's 1 and 2. 3 will happen. History says that's true. A few times I escape, but most of the time, 1 and 2 leads to 3 for me almost every time. And so based on that, I understand the consequences. So I got to be honest about the consequence. Paul made a statement in 1 Corinthians chapter 9 that's so profound, it's so powerful. I'm telling you, it just changes, it's life-changing. He says, I discipline my body, 1 Corinthians 9:27, and bring it into subjection, lest when I preach to others, warn my kids, told others, I become disqualified. I can become a person who loses his way. The Message Bible said this way, I don't know about you, but I'm running hard for the finish line. I'm giving it everything I've got. No sloppy living for me. I'm staying alert and in top condition. I'm not going to get caught napping, sleeping with anybody, telling everyone else all about it, and then missing out myself. Paul said, not me. But the part I want you to notice is, I want you to notice the big statement in verse 27 about becoming disqualified. I'm going to tell a story that I never planned to tell publicly, but it was a story I learned just a little while ago. It's a very personal story, and I told it last night, so I just felt like, I guess God wants me to tell it to everybody, so here it goes. My mother had me as a single parent. And I'm glad to be alive. But here's what's amazing. It's something I didn't know. You know how in these families, you learn these secrets, as the older you get, in 57, you kind of start asking questions and you start piecing stuff together. And I don't know, a few months ago, I came into this incredible piece of information. And this will surprise you. My mother went to college, and I didn't know it. All of my life, until a few months ago, I didn't know she went to college at all. And she went for 2 years. And on a school break, she got pregnant with me. I didn't know that. Now, you got to understand, the part about telling this story now is, in the first sermon when I preached this, I was crying by this point. I've kind of gathered myself by now. Because I never told the story publicly, and I was moved. Because I felt in the middle of teaching this series, you need to close with that story. And I paused while preaching, like, I don't want to tell that. And it's like, no, you need to tell that so somebody can hear it. Because here's what I've learned. The greatest victims of bedroom blindness are women. Men, you have your story. I understand that. We have our own testimony of how bad it can affect us and finances and emotionally. We have our own story, and that's another sermon. But I want to point this out. Ladies, you are the greatest victims. You carry the babies. You carry the challenge. When it's all said and done, it's in your hand. You financially pay the greatest price. They go to the courts and tell the guy to give you a certain amount of money, but it's nowhere near all of what it costs. That's the truth. That's the truth. All you got to do is switch places and say, hey, guy, you can take care of this baby for this amount. I mean, it's just, I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm just trying to say bedroom blindness is expensive. And especially for women. And here's what's interesting to me. This would move me to tears when I was stunned. My mother, I thought she went to high school. I did not know. She never talked to me about college. She never told me once. She never told me one time. I'm her only child. And she was so ashamed, she never told me she went to college. Imagine that. I don't even know what she wanted to be. I don't know what her dream was. I interrupted it, though. So I'm glad to be here, but let's just be honest for a moment. There's something incredible. There's something incredible. Hold on. There's something incredible about what can happen to your dream because of bedroom blindness. Imagine that. I was going through some family stuff, right? And I ran across and I thought, college. And so remember you call the member in the family you call who knows everything? So I called that person. And they said, oh, yeah, in South Carolina. She went to college. Yeah, she was second year. She scrubbed floors so that I can go to college and stand here. Now I know why she was so proud that day. Now I know why she stood there. She still wouldn't tell me. It's amazing, isn't it? You need to hear what I'm telling you. College students, what year was she in? Hold your fingers up. Say second year. No, you can say it. Say second year. Now, if I can tell my story, you can say second year. Come on. She's in her second year.